Hello people, I'm the Real Comic Book Gamer, and today I'm going to be talking about The Punisher Born, which is Punisher's sort of pre-origin story. This is talking about his days in Vietnam, his last days in Vietnam, because, the origin of Punisher is when him and his family got shot up in a park, but he was the only one to survive. This is prior to that. This is him in his last days in Vietnam, and it's a great book. It's a fantastic origin book. It's very short. It's only 4 issues, but those 4 issues are really impactful, and it's just a really great story. So today I'm going to be talking about that. Throughout most of this book, we see events from the perspective of a guy named Stevie Goodwin. We see some stuff from Punisher's perspective, but for the most part, we're inside the mind of Stevie Goodwin, who is under Punisher's command. So Punisher is a sergeant at Valley Forge, but he is not the #1 commanding officer there. He is number 2. So the commanding officer there just does not care at all. He's just waiting for the war to be over, because the war is almost over, and no one really cares about this place, Valley Forge. No one at all except for Punisher. Everyone else just feels like, we're so close to going home, the war is almost over, none of it matters, this place isn't that important. But Punisher obviously is just big time about how important this base is and how it could affect the war, and that he wants to keep on fighting. And you see that clearly. He's kind of fell in love with war, because he doesn't really know much else to do. Like, this is his thing. He loves the adrenaline of war. He loves, like, he even says in his mind and stuff, like, he's talking about, oh, it's about duty, it's about blah blah. And clearly it's not really about that. Like, those are factors in it, like, the duty to your country, to protect your country and things like that, but it's mostly because he's fallen in love with war. He loves the feeling he gets when he's in a firefight. We even see Stevie Goodwin talking about how he is not going to be like Captain Castle. He's not going to fall in love with war like Frank Castle did, and his whole goal is to, like, sort of get out of this thing unscathed, to get out of this like a normal person, because everyone's got their own little, like, kinks and ticks about everything. They've got, like, everyone's been messed up by this war, and basically Stevie Goodwin's like, I just want to be a normal guy that fought through Vietnam and survived, and I'm not going to talk about any of this when I get home. I want to leave it all in the past. This is not me. That I'm just doing my duty. This is not, like, who I am. And yeah, we see that he talks about how Frank Castle is running out of war, and you can see that Castle's kind of afraid of that. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know anything else. Like, what can he do after this? Anyways, during this story, it opens up with them going on patrol and showing them taking out some Viet Cong, and then we go back to the Firebase Valley Forge, to where Punisher is talking to, Frank Castle, he's talking to the commanding officer there, and he's talking about how we're getting all this intel, we've been taking out a bunch of Viet Cong, we see that they're getting ready for an offensive attack, they're going to attack us, we need more supplies and things, but the commanding officer there is just like, he doesn't care about anything. He's like, nah, the war's almost over, no one cares about this base, I'm not going to order any more supplies for us, doesn't matter. But then he's like, yeah, but this guy named General Patton is about to be here, you can show him around the base, even though I'm supposed to, I'm just going to say I'm sick. And so then he passes that off to Frank Castle. Frank Castle goes and he shows the general around the base, and the general is just so disgusted with how the base is. It's all messy, you've got a bunch of junkies there, no one cares. And Frank Castle tells the general straight up, talking about how he's like, yeah, no one cares about this base at all, so why should the people here care about it? No one in, like, high command cares to give us supplies or help us out at all, so of course all the people here don't care at all, because they don't see, like, why should we care? And so the general is disgusted with the base, and he tells Frank Castle that he's going to shut it down. So Frank Castle's like, hold on, there's one more thing I gotta show you. He leads him up to this ridge to where it says, like, careful, snipers out, and Frank Castle just, like, leans on the sign that says that, and he's like, go up on that ridge. So the general goes up there, he's like, what am I supposed to be looking at? And then he gets popped by a Viet Cong sniper, and so that takes care of that for Frank Castle, so he doesn't have to worry about anyone shutting down his base. Also, during some of these panels in this book, Punisher looks a lot like Marlon Brando, and Marlon Brando played Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now, so I don't know if, like, that was on purpose or not. I read some of the notes at the end by the artist, and I didn't see anything about him drawing inspiration from that, but just, like, young Frank Castle looks like a young Marlon Brando. He just does in a lot of these panels. Like, he just looks strikingly similar to him, so I don't know if that was on purpose or not. I just thought that was interesting. Anyways, moving on. So after Frank has the general killed, basically, we see that Frank's alone with his thoughts. He's just sitting there, and there's this voice in his head that's talking to him. It's talking about how it knows how much he loves all this, how he feels so alive, and how he's full of this fierce black joy, and how, like, this war's coming to an end. But he can just, like, this voice can fix it to where Frank can do this forever. It says, I can fix it so you can do this forever, Frank. There'll be a price to pay, but you can keep on going and never have to stop. Just say the word and I can fix it. And then it says, who am I? Is that what you're asking? Well, who do you think I am, Frank? And so here, it's a little confusing, like, who this voice is, because at first, when it's talking, it's like, oh, so this is like the inner monologue in Frank's head, like in most comics we get with the main character. But no, it's some other voice in there that's just talking to him. It's kind of creepy, kind of weird. And yeah, after that, we're back with Stevie Goodwin. We see he's got a buddy named Angel. Angel is addicted to crack, though, and so Angel's got a bit of a problem there. But Stevie Goodwin tries to help him because Angel basically saved his life when they were out in the field one day. He saved him from some Viet Cong that were going to kill him. So from then on, him and Angel have been good friends, and he's been trying to keep him safe and try to keep him clean, but he's addicted to crack, and that's not exactly easy to get off of. So they have a good relationship. They have a back and forth, and Stevie talks to him about how, like, you know, don't you want to go home? And Angel tells him how there is no going home for him. Like, he doesn't care about what's back there. It's just the ghetto, and he doesn't want to go back. Like, there's nothing for him there. Later, we see Frank lead a squad back into the forest, back into the woods to go and hunt for more Viet Cong and see what they're doing. They run into an ambush, and a couple of them get picked off until Frank just goes ham with an M60, just takes out pretty much all of them, except for this one woman that got injured, and they capture her. And this one guy is about to rape her until Frank comes and kills the woman, like right when the guy was about to rape her. So this guy's like got blood all over his face, and then Frank says, we're here to kill the enemy, that's all. So you see, as bad as of a guy Frank is, and as much as he hates the Viet Cong, he's got some decency, and he's got some morals. After that, we see the guy who was attempting to rape that woman. He went to this river to try to clean his face, and while he's got his face in the water, Frank just steps on his head and drowns him. And our main character, Stevie Goodwin, sees this, and he's kind of scared for his own life, because he's like, okay, that was kind of justified what Frank did, but if he knows I saw that, will he kill me? Because this guy doesn't know a whole lot about Frank Castle. No one does, because Castle's not exactly an open guy. He's not very talkative. So when we get back to the base, we get an interaction between the two main characters, Frank Castle and Stevie Goodwin. They start talking, and Frank mentions how he did see him when he was killing that guy, and he talks about why he did it, how it was punishment for trying to rape that woman. How he's like, yeah, I wanted to punish him. And then Stevie Goodwin asks him, what about the girl? And Frank, now I'm going to quote the book here for like the rest of the page. Stevie Goodwin asks, what about the girl? Frank says, don't be stupid. I put a Viet Cong sniper on a medevac, and not a man in the platoon ever trusts me in combat again. I hand her over to Intel, and she doesn't tell them anything. The ARVN interpreters take turns with her, then they shoot her in the head. And then he says, Goodwin, you don't have to be scared of me. Then we get inside Goodwin's head, where we get in his monologue, and he says, but I am. Of course I am, because this place is hell, and we need a man like him to lead us through it. And what that says about us is unthinkable, because of the look he has in his eyes, the one that's always there. And worst of all, because what he did to that girl today was his idea of helping her out. So yeah, he's just talking about how he saw his idea of helping this girl out who was going to be raped was killing her, because he saw that as ending her suffering, because he couldn't put her on a medevac to get help, because if he did, no one in his platoon would ever trust him again, because he's putting in it, because from their point of view, he's just putting an enemy sniper in a medevac to go help him. And it's like, yeah, that's not a good thing. Like, that doesn't look good for your men when you're supposed to be a strong leader. So that's why he just shot her, and that obviously is scarring to a normal guy like Stevie Goodwin, who's just kind of in the middle of all this. Frank is now talking to the commanding officer who I was talking about before, who is this drunkard that does not care about this base at all. He's just waiting for the war to be over. Frank tells them how they need a resupply and soon, and they really need a lot of support because a storm's coming, and he thinks the Viet Cong's waiting for the storm to happen so they can come and attack at that moment, because when the storm's happening, they'll have no air support, no artillery help from anyone. But then the commanding officer says to him, look, you're the only one that hasn't noticed, so I'll spell it out for you. No one cares about this place, the enemy least of all. Everyone knows the war is almost over. And that doesn't sit well with Frank. The commanding officer goes into the bathroom, and Frank is about to throw a grenade in there, and he's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. He hasn't done anything too bad, because the general was going to, like, completely shut down an important base, and so that's why Frank saw that as justified when he killed him. But this guy just wouldn't call in resupply, because the guy tells Frank that he hasn't called in for resupply, because Frank is talking about how he's like, we haven't been resupplied in weeks, and the commanding officer is like, yeah, I haven't asked for resupply forever, because the war's almost over, and I don't care about this. Then after Frank decides not to kill the guy, we see Frank have another conversation. Well, not conversation, a one-side conversation where the voice in his head starts talking to him again about how he should have killed that guy. What stopped him? No one would have known. It didn't matter. And yeah, just more creepy voice talking to him. Now Frank goes and starts talking to Stevie Goodwin again. He starts talking to him about his family, how he's got a wife and a daughter, and he's got a baby on the way that he's hoping is a boy. And he tells him how he thinks, he's like, I sometimes think they might be my last chance. Saying that, yeah, like, he doesn't know if there's anything else that could really save him, that could get him out of this mindset of this feeling of like constantly being like needing to have this war around him, because he's never felt so alive in his life, and like without this he doesn't know how it'll be, but he thinks his family can maybe be that saving grace for him. And a little bit after this, the attack on the base happens. The Viet Cong just start moving in, and it's a massacre. They're killing everyone there. Even Stevie Goodwin's friend Angel, he's having a conversation with him, and then his head just gets blown off. And then it's just pretty much Stevie Goodwin and Punisher as like the last ones alive that are going through trying to survive this attack. And we see Stevie Goodwin die. And the way it's done is really clever, because earlier in the book, when Stevie Goodwin was talking about how he's going to make it out of this, he's going to be one of the normal people, he's talking about how like he can't wait to be on a plane ride home, and how there's going to be these pretty stewardesses that are going to be like angels to him. And so we see that they're in the middle of like all this napalm, just fire everywhere. Stevie Goodwin is just sitting there, and then a guy comes out through the flames and just like, it's implied that he bayonet charges him, but we see Stevie Goodwin yanked out of frame onto a plane with all these like stewardesses and stuff, and like in the clouds, and he's happy. I thought it was really clever, like, and like well done how they did his death right there. They don't show him getting like stabbed to death or anything. We just see a man rushing him, and then all of a sudden he was in his like idea of heaven that he had talked about earlier. And I really just liked how that was done. And of course, it's a very sad, emotional moment, because this was the character that we got to know the most throughout this book, along with Frank Castle. And he always thought he was going to make it out alive and normal, so to see him die was kind of sad, but at the same time, he is free of it now. And so there's at least that. But then after this, we see Frank is just taking on the rest of the Viet Cong, and he finally says yes to that voice in his head, because he's like killing a bunch of people. You can see he's just taking them all on, and then it seems like it's winding down, but the voice is like, just say yes and you'll survive this. He says yes, and then the next panel we get to see is like reinforcements coming in. We see Frank just surrounded by dead men. Just dead men on both sides. We just see Frank just surrounded. And yeah, so Frank said yes to this voice, and he survived this whole massacre. Just killed all the Viet Cong that were attacking, even though no one else survived. Then we see Frank arrive at the airport to meet his family that's there to pick him up, and he's all happy that he finally gets to see his family. He's talking about he's not going to go back. Like, he went as far as he ever wants to go. He's not going to go on another tour. And then in the middle of this happy moment, the voice just starts talking to Frank, and the voice is like, anyways, down to business. You said yes to my offer, Frank, and I delivered. Not every day you beat 24 men to death and soak up 7 bullets, is it? And, well, how can I put this? You remember that I mentioned there'd be a price, and then the page is just his family with the Punisher logo in the background. And then the voice just tells him that it's too late. This is a done deal. He's got like his family is the price he has to pay. And it's like, oh, you want to know who I am? Well, let's just say we're in the same business and we'll be good friends, although you'll never hear from me again. And yeah, so Frank is obviously a little worried at this, but he just hugs his family and says, hold tight. And this is really mysterious and changes a lot about the Punisher origin, because it's kind of predetermined prior to what happened in that park that his family was going to die. And no one knows who this voice is. It's implied, obviously, like you can read into it and be like, oh, is that like death itself? Is that supposed to be like Grim Reaper? Is that supposed to be Satan? Something like that, because Frank did beat 24 men that were surrounding him and survive like soaking in 7 bullets. So that's obviously not something a normal person could do, and his family was the price he had to pay for it. This adds a lot to the Punisher origin, is definitely very intense and really interesting. But yeah, that's the end of the book, and even though this is a 14-minute video, I still didn't get through everything that happened, so I highly recommend, if you are interested in this at all, to go buy the book and read it for yourself. It's one of the best origin stories, technically a pre-origin story, but it does add a lot to the original origin story, and yeah, it's just great. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and please let me know in the comments below if you have read this. What did you think about it? Like, what were your thoughts on Punisher Born if you've read it? Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later.